Cinderella by Suzanne Jeffers. There once was a man whose wife died, so he took another. The new wife was proud and haughty, and had 2 daughters who were just like her in every way. But the man also had a daughter, and she was sweet and gentle and good as gold. The wedding was hardly over before the woman began making her stepdaughter's life a misery. From early morning until late night, the girl was forced to work, to scour the dishes and scrub the floors and pick up after her stepsisters. She did all that she asked and dared not complain to her father, who would only have scolded her, for his new wife ruled him. When she had finished her work, she used to go to the chimney corner and sit quietly among the cinders, and so she was called Cinder Witch. But the younger sister, who was not quite as rude as the others, called her Cinderella. In her ragged clothing and her dirty face, Cinderella was yet 100 times more beautiful than her stepsisters. After some months had passed, the king's son gave a ball, and invited it to all the stylish people in the countryside. The 2 stepsisters were also invited, and immediately set about choosing their gowns and petticoats, the hair ornaments or slippers they would wear. This made Cinderella's work still harder, for it was she who ironed their linen and pleated their ruffles all day long. The sisters talked of nothing of how they should be dressed. One night, as Cinderella was helping them, they said to her, "Cinderella, would you not like to go to the ball?" "Please, sisters, do not mock me," she said. "How could I dream of such a thing?" "You're right," they answered. "People surely laugh to see a Cinder Witch at the ball." For 2 days the sisters could hardly eat for excitement. So tightly did they lace themselves that they broke a dozen laces, and they were always at their looking-glasses trying on different gowns. At least the evening of the ball came. Cinderella watched the sisters leave for the court, and when she had lost sight of them, she began to weep. Her godmother, who was a fairy, saw her tears, and asked, "What's the matter?" I wish I could go to the ball," stammered Cinderella. But she could say no more for crying. "Well then, go you shall," said her godmother. Then she told the girl to go into the garden for a pumpkin. Cinderella picked up the finest she could find and carried it indoors. Her godmother scooped it out and struck it with her wand. Instantly the pumpkin turned into a fine glided coach. Next the godmother went into the mousetrap, where she found 6 mice, all alive. She tapped each with her wand, and they turned into white horses, a fine set of them to draw the coaches. But they still needed a coachman, so Cinderella brought the rat trap to her godmother. Inside there were 3 rats. The godmother chose the one with the longest whiskers, and as soon as she touched him with her wand, he became a fat coachman with the most imposing beard. After the godmother turned 6 lizards into footmen, who jumped up behind the coach and held on as if they had done nothing else their whole lives. Then her godmother said to Cinderella, "Well, my dear, here is your carriage. I hope it pleases you." "Oh, yes," the girl cried. "But am I to wear these rags to the ball?" Her godmother simply touched Cinderella with her wand, and at once her clothes turned into a gown of silver. Then she gave Cinderella a pair of glass slippers, the most beautiful imaginable. But as the girl was making ready to leave, the godmother warned her that she must return home by midnight. If she stayed a moment longer, her coach would be a pumpkin again, her horses mice, her coachman a rat, her 4 footmen lizards, and her clothes would be back into rags. Cinderella promised she would not be late, and then she went off into the ball, her heart pounding with joy. The king's son had been told that a great princess unknown to all the company would soon arrive, and he ran out to receive her himself. He gave her his hand, and she sprang from the coach and led her into the hall where everyone was assembled. At once there was silence, so awed were the guests by this mysterious princess that they left off dancing, and the musicians ceased to play. Then a hushed murmur swept the room. "Ah, how lovely she is! How lovely!" The king's son led her across the floor, and they danced together again and again. A fine banquet was served, but the young prince only gazed at her, and could not eat a bite. After some time she left his side and went to sit by her sisters. She treated them with kindness, and offered them sections of oranges that the prince had given to her. It very much pleased them to be singled out by this way. Then Cinderella heard the clock strike 11:45. Quickly she wished the company good night, and ran to the hall and down the place steps into the coach. When she was home again, she found her godmother, and thanked her, and asked if she might go to the ball again the next day. As Cinderella was telling her godmother all that happened, the two stepsisters came in the room. "If you had only been there," said her sisters. "There was an unknown princess, the most beautiful scene in the world. She sat with us and gave us oranges. She was really so very beautiful. And do you not know her name?" Then Cinderella turned to the older one. "Ah, dear sisters, won't you give me your plainest dresses, so that I might see the princess for myself?" "What? Lend my clothes to a dirty cinder witch? I should be out of my mind," cried the sister. Cinderella had expected such an answer, and she was very glad that one of them refused. The next evening the two sisters went to the ball, and she went too, dressed even more exquisitely than the first time. The king's son was always with her, and spoke to her with words of praise. So entranced was Cinderella that she forgot about her grandmother's warning, and heard the chimes of midnight strike when she thought it could be no more than 11 o'clock. At once she rose and fled, nimbling as a deer. Though the princess rushed after her, he could not catch her. In her haste she left behind one glass slipper, which she picked up and carried with him. Cinderella's coach had vanished, and she had run home in the dark. Of her finery nothing remained but one glass slipper. The guard at the plaza gates were asked if they had seen the princess, but they had replied that no one had come but a poor county girl dressed in rags. When the two sisters returned from the ball, Cinderella asked whether the unknown princess had again appeared. They told her yes, but said she'd hurried away the moment the clock struck midnight, and now the king's son had only one glass slipper left behind. They said he was heartbroken, and would do anything to find her once more. All this was true. A few days afterwards the king's son proclaimed that he would marry the woman for whom the glass slipper had been made. The courtiers began trying on the slippers on all the princesses. They tried it on the duchess, and then they tried it on the ladies of the court. But nowhere in the land could they find a woman whose foot was small enough to fit the slipper. At last it was brought to the two sisters. They pushed and pushed, trying to squeeze their feet inside, but they were not able to manage it. Cinderella was in the room, and recognized her slipper. "Let me see if it fits my foot," she said. Her sisters began to tease her, but the courtier who had been sent with the slipper looked at Cinderella, and saw she was lovely. He said his orders were that every woman in the land must try it on. Cinderella sat down, and he held a slipper up to her foot. It went on at once, as easily as if it had been made of wax. Then, while the two sisters watched, Cinderella drew from her pocket the other glass slipper, and put it on too. Suddenly her godmother was there, and she touched the girl's ragged clothes, with her wand, and they became a gown even more beautiful than the one she had worn at the ball. And now her two sisters knew she had been the unknown princess they had so admired. So they threw themselves at her feet and begged for her forgiveness. For all their ill treatment, Cinderella bid them rise and said that she forgave them with all her heart. Then Cinderella was taken before the prince. He was overwhelmed with love for her, and some time later they were married. Cinderella, who was good and she was beautiful, gave her two sisters a home at the palace, and they, the very same day, were married to the two lords of the court.